Time to whip out your Christmas balls.
Oh my god.
With Toxic Radio's Kick-Ass Christmas. All December long, nothing but rockin' Christmas tunes. Jingle bell, jingle bell. Not the same old boring Christmas songs over and over again.
Better watch out, better not cry.
It's a kick-ass Christmas.
Santa Claus is coming to
Only on Toxic Radio.
All right, everybody, it's Christmas. Let's party.
Don't play it safe. Play it toxic. Ho, 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 bitches.
Enjoying all that Toxic Radio has to offer? Well, make sure you like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Be the first to find out about ticket giveaways, amazing guests, awesome contests, and Toxic Radio events. Just search Toxic Radio Live, all one word, and press that little button. Every time you do, someone here at Toxic Radio will get their wings. Yay! Well, not really.
Aww.
But we will get a warm, fuzzy feeling in our tummies. But then again, that just might be the beer. Anyway, like and follow us, and we will see you out there on the interwebs.
Hungry for Hope Nation. Donnie here. And today we got amazing show, Hungry for Hope Nation. We're telling the story of Jason Vukovich. We'll have his sister Angelina on. We have her on now. Angelina, you there? Angelina's not there.
Can you hear me now?
There she is. She was playing.
Hello.
Can you hear us good,
I
Angelina?
forgot that I had muted myself. That's my bad.
You're one of them people you like to do the coming a little late so everybody notices?
Well, I like to mute just in case there's, noises going on in the background, and I forgot I had muted myself, so.
So you're smart.
Yeah,
Well,
I have to. I work in IT remotely, so have to be muting.
Angelina, man, it's amazing to have you on the show. I love Jason's story, but I don't just like his story. I love how you're involved with it, man. You're his sister. You've done everything with the campaign. You've really brought this campaign to life from what I saw. The Justice for Jason and everything kind of seems to happen since you started, getting everything rolling.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I wasn't expecting all of this to actually have happened, honestly, or so quickly and so fast. And I don't know if you know the backstory or if anybody listening knows the backstory, but I didn't know my brothers up until I think we actually talked for the first time in April of 2018. And this was after Jason was locked up. But basically, I had looked for them for a long time and found them and all of that. So I don't know. Do you want me to go into who Jason is, or?
Of course, you know better than me. But anybody who's listening who might not know little, Jason's currently incarcerated. He was charged with some attacks on sexual predators, I guess you can call them. He was also a victim of child sexual abuse, who was in so many ways wronged and victimized by not just his abuser, but by the system. From everything I've seen, all the proof out there, and the only person who ended up getting in trouble was really him, not the abusers, the people who victimized him over and over. So now he's been locked up since what, 2016, and you didn't know him then. You were searching for him, right? You were his half sister.
That's correct. Yes. So, long story short, we have the same father. Father abandoned them when they were little, went on to, have me, but never stayed around to meet me either. But I did know that I had two brothers out there, and I searched for them off and on for 16 years. And eventually I signed up for Ancestry.com and ended up finding them, and I found Jason in prison, which was super heartbreaking because, I thought I had the crappy end of the stick all growing up. My mom passed away when I was 6. I never met our dad, but and I thought they had lived this happy life. My 2 brothers, Jason and Joel, I thought they had lived their happy life with mom and dad, when in reality, I find out our dad left them and left them with the mother, who remarried to this man who would, go into their bedrooms at night for late night prayer sessions and molest them. So, and that man was actually, he was convicted of molesting and beating them, served 0 days in prison, and was actually sent back to father them. So when I found my brothers, I wrote to Jason in prison. He immediately wrote me back.
How did you find out?
Oh, go ahead.
Like when you looked up on when you found out he was your brother, it didn't tell you he was also, you didn't know anything about the story, right, at first?
No. Okay. So yes. So what happened was I had some digging around for 3 days on Ancestry.com, finding all these connections, messaging people on every platform that I could message. Hey, I think you're part of my family. Hey, I think you're part of my family. And then I actually found they ended up having 2 half siblings after. So when she remarried, I like to call him Chester the molester. His name is Larry Lee Fulton.
And that's the abuser, correct?
Yes, that is the abuser.
So Jason's father, who was your father, abandoned you guys. That's how life started off. His father abandoned him. And then the guy who took his role and adopted him went from father to, the devil. He was an abuser, correct?
Yes. And the crazy thing was they were all, like, our father was born in Indonesia, because our entire family over there, missionaries and all very religious and everything. And in fact, their mother actually found her new husband in their church very shortly after our father, Gary, left them. Quickly remarried. They started having kids. They had 2 children, Justin and Jana. So there were 4 total in the household. Now, Justin and Jana, being his own spawn, they didn't get beaten. They didn't get molested. It was just my two brothers. So there's Joel, who's the oldest, and then Jason. And they lived 2 very different lives. Like Joel, and this is a prime example of how people deal with things very differently. Not everybody deals with things the same way. And that's why when people are like, oh, you can't, take the law into your own hands. Oh, he had a choice. Oh, he did this. And yes, okay, great. But people deal with things very differently. For example, Joel actually went on to be very successful, and he owns his own cybersecurity company, making tons of money in California, never been in prison. And then Jason lived a life of crime,
And Joel was also abused.
Anyway.
Joel was abused just like Jason. They both from the same person under the same house, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So, okay. So going back, so she marries. They have the other 2 children. They're in church services like 3-4 times a week, different church events, all of this. And the beatings is what started at first. So he would, beat them with belts. He would beat them with 2x4s, like 2-handled paddles that he would make. And then at some point, it was so Joel's the oldest. It was when Joel was 16 and Jason was 12, I believe. He started going into their bedroom late at night for late night prayer sessions. And that's when he started molesting them. And this went on for like a year. And at some point, they actually told their mother about it. Like Jason actually told Sandy, their mother, about the molesting, and she didn't believe them. Called Larry in there and made them tell him to his face. And of course, he denied it. So that went on for about a year.
Angelina, I just want to stop you for 1 minute, Angelina. I want to stop you. You told the story for about 2 minutes, and somebody just messaged us saying they want to donate $1,000 to getting Jason's story spread anywhere they can. Let them know where to send it.
Oh my gosh, no
Ronnie.
way. What? Thanks so much, Ronnie. You have no idea. We'll get into this later, but we're actually trying to get him PTSD therapy. So this is huge because we have to pay for it, and we just, anyways.
And no one knew that. I knew that. You told me about that earlier about how you guys were trying to get funds together.
Yes,
But yeah,
like, well, we haven't even gotten to that part yet. Like, thank you so much.
yeah, I just wanted to share that with you and keep going.
Wow. I don't even know where I was.
You were talking about how the abuser, what I stood out there was he kind of used religion is what I got out of this as the cover for his all the abuse, which you see so common.
Yes,
people.
that is correct. And that's the crazy thing about the whole thing is that, so I'll get to that. So the late night prayer sessions, mother didn't believe him. She made him tell the abuser, tell Larry to his face, and of course he denied it. So anyways, this goes on for a year or so. And basically, and you can find videos of like my brother Joel actually staying in the courtroom, we had bunk beds, and when he would come in, we'd roll up as close as we could to the wall, to hope, pretend there was, and that it was his job to go first, so he would hopefully leave Jason alone. And it was really heartbreaking. And at some point, Joel has a girlfriend. I think he's 17 at this point, and he runs away with the girlfriend. Girlfriend finds out what's going on. She's like, "We need to get you the hell out of here." Runs away with the girlfriend and steals mom's car and ends up getting caught. Now, the police catch them and they threaten to take them back to the home. And he's like, "Oh, no, we're not going back," or "I'm not going back." So Jason's still at the house. "I'm not going back. This is what's going on." And he starts telling, everything that's going on. So an investigation is launched, right? Well, they pull Jason in for questioning. And of course, Jason being a 13-year-old now at this point, he's now from 12 to 13, you don't always want to go up against your parent figures. And so he told some truths, but he didn't admit to everything that was going on. So here Joel is spilling all the beans, and 13-year-old little Jason, scared to death about going up against his parents and his religious parents and whatever else, doesn't fully tell the truth. Anyways, he ends up going to court, and he actually admitted to doing it and said, I guess what Jason told me is that he said that the reason, his excuse was that he was trying to make sure that their penises worked, was his whole reason. And anyways, he gets convicted of beating and molesting both of them, served 0 days in prison because he was sentenced to a 3-year suspended sentence. Joel was actually put in foster care for the year from 17 to 18 until he was old enough to be on his own. But Jason was sent back in with his mother, and mother supported Larry the entire time, all the way throughout, even being convicted and admitting it and everything, and brings Larry back in the home. They pack up everything in Anchorage. This is in Anchorage, Alaska. They pack up everything in Anchorage, and they move off to a little town called Wasilla in the valley.
Now, did Jason and Joel went with them now? Did they both go with them?
Joel was in foster. So this is what doesn't make sense to me, is I'm like, just because Joel was fully truthful and Jason tells us about everything that was going on, they let the 13-year-old go back into the home. Mother took father back into the home. I don't understand.
And this is our legal. The people you're talking about are judges and prosecutors and law enforcement. They're not just like these are the people who are supposed to protect. I know me growing up, you're taught your parents. The parents are the number one protectors. And after that, I was taught, the law enforcement and the governments, and they were other people. So now his father left him. He never met his real father, did he? And then the guy who adopted him.
So real father raised them until he was about 3. So he did meet him, but he doesn't remember him, right? So I actually never met Gary. Like, our dad's name is Gary. I've never met him. I've seen him with my eyes one time, but I've never actually met him. He's never seen me. So, but yeah, they moved off to Wasilla. Joel never had to see them again, but Jason had to live with them. And no child protective services was sent back to check on them. No house visits.
He wasn't on any kind of.
Didn't check on them.
He wasn't on any kind of. He didn't have to. What did he plead to exactly? I know they downgraded it. He did admit to.
It was second degree abuse of a minor, I think is what the actual charges were. Second degree abuse of a minor. And I haven't been able to find the case file and get all the details because there's something in it that's sealed, and I'm not sure. I'm hoping to be able to get access to it soon because we have some other stuff going on, but I don't know. It's just, and nobody went back to check on him. Like, why was there not any court order for people to go check on the 13-year-old when he was just admitting to sexually abusing another kid? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't understand it.
That's the part of the whole case that sticks out to me, man. Like, I can't imagine being a 13-year-old who your dad left you, then the guy who became your dad abuses you, does the worst thing possible, the worst thing a human can do, take advantage of a kid sexually. And then the people who are supposed to protect him, they don't not just protect him, but they also become they're the abusers too, because they sent that person back. You know, could you imagine if that was in the news today, nowadays, and somebody, you know, it just sounds unbelievable. That was the thing that kept on standing out to me.
I grew up without parents. Like, my mom passed away when I was 6. My dad wasn't there. I had no parents. Jason had 3. He had Sandy, his mother, he had Gary, our father, and he had Larry, stepfather, and all 3 of them turned their back on him. And that flabbergasted me, broke my heart, especially as a parent, like, knowing what it's like to have children and knowing that they literally look up to you to protect them from everything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you are their number one protector, and he had all 3 of them completely turn their back on him. And then on top of that, the courts did as well. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, when I found his story, and I spent weeks, like, researching and reading up on everything that had happened, like, I literally wrecked my car because I had stayed up all night, like, researching and, like, bawling, and I had to, like, take the kids to school, and I, like, backed out into a car that had been there, like, for like 3 years. I just completely was out of my mind. Like,
and you're just finding out. You're probably happy you finally found your brother, who he was. And then you walk right into, you know, one of the worst cases of
found that out. Like, I was crushed, and then I was like, oh my God, I had it great. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had a good life. Like, I had family that came to my side and helped me out, and he had nobody.
Yeah, what's worse? What's worse than not having? The only thing worse than not having parents there for you, having them there and having them, you know, be your abusers and torment. And
yes, be your abusers, and not. So anyway, so Jason, you know, they went to Wasilla. Jason did his best. So I asked Jason this. I said, did the sexual abuse continue from 13 on? And he said, no. And I said, okay, did the beatings continue? He said, yes. So he was still being beaten, but he wasn't being sexually abused. So I don't know if that's a good thing or whatever, but he basically would get jobs, and he would be out of the house as possible. He would, you know, do fishing tours and hunting tours, like, and he was being homeschooled. So he was public school before this, but when they gathered him up and moved him to Wasilla, where he knew nobody, the only people that they had a small faction. Oh, here's another thing. Whenever the case was going on, and they were, you know, Larry was on trial or whatever, the church, like, had family meetings with them and was like, you need to forgive him. You know, they tried to sweep everything under the rug. They were like, he was like, I'll never forget. They told me one time, make sure that when they ask you about this, that you never ejaculated. Like, they were coaching these kids to say these
This was
things.
the church?
This was the church, yes.
Because abuser, they were, from what I gathered out of it, they were pretty big in the church, and, like, kind of use that as their cover. And I feel like that had to do something with the court system doing what they did too. You know, them churches, and they're all connected. That's what I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, especially years ago like that, if the church had some kind of power over that court system. That's the only thing that would make sense to me.
It just blew my mind. Like I just couldn't understand that part of it. Like why? And then so the reason why they moved to Wasilla was because there's a small faction of that same church there. So Jason knew nobody, and he was homeschooled now. He didn't get to go to public school. He didn't get to meet other adults, other kids that weren't in the church.
He's homeschooled now?
He's homeschooled now, yes.
So that's probably the worst case scenario. Like we've had a lot of people come on this show, and they said during the pandemic, the worst thing was a lot of victims, they use school as their outlet. That's the only time they're away from their abuser. That's the time where they feel safe. And during the pandemic, it was horrible because these children had to stay in the house with their abusers. And that's exactly what they did to Jason. No, not one person stood up and said, what the hell's going on here? Nobody. No family. Nobody saw what was going on. You there, Angelina? Angelina, I don't know if you broke up on us. I think we lost you, but we'll get you back on. We'll work on it. And every time I hear about this story, for anybody listening, anybody who might not know this whole story, when I heard the story in the beginning, I thought it was remarkable. But I feel like some people, they look at it and they think, oh, he's a vigilante, a guy who went and beat up child abuse. That's what he was charged with. Jason was charged with attacking 3 people who were registered sex offenders, pedophiles, people who were convicted for sexually abusing other people, children. He hunted them down, found their addresses, and attacked them in the name of victims. And they called him the Alaskan Avenger, and he went after him. That's what he was charged with, and they gave him 23 years for that. We're going to get Angelina on to tell more, but just anybody who just heard what she said, you know, it's so much more. He was a victim. He was the biggest victim in all this. And people said, oh, he should have went to the police. He did all that. Everybody found him at every part of the way. His family, his parents, the court system. He was found. Like no kid should ever have to go through what he went through. And it's all open for anybody to see. You there, Angelina? I think we might have Richard Jensen now.
Hey, Jason, we need Angelina back on there. Her story is just incredibly awesome. I mean, what a warrior, you know. It's a tragic situation, Jason. Or, excuse me, I'm lost. I was so into the interview. Is she
we got
still
Richard
here?
Jensen on. Angelina's going to come back on. Angelina was calling in on from Dallas. Something must have happened, but while we're doing that, we're going to bring Richard Jensen on. If anybody remembers Richard, his story is he went from homelessness to National Champion Wrestler. He's to be a champion in life. They did a documentary on ESPN for him. They won an Emmy, and he's also was a victim of sexual abuse as a child.
Yeah, so let me just be clear. I wasn't a victim of sexual abuse. Okay, but what I have dealt with is a lot of addiction around the nation, and a lot of.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
I love this. People are coming from I can hear you fine.
Did I just disappear?
I don't know. You ghosted us. I thought I said something that you didn't like, or I don't know.
So you were just sitting here, like, okay.
The show must go on.
Froze, and I was like,
the show must go on. You there, Angelina? Oh, if you're frozen again, I swear. We got Richard. We got people are loving this story. And I think it's almost good to take this little break just to keep up to date. So at this point, Jason was a 13-year-old who was sexually abused by his stepfather. His dad was out of the picture. That's why he had this stepfather. His dad left him when he was a little kid, and then the guy who took over that role as father didn't leave him. He abused him. And he was convicted. He went to court. he pled guilty. I think they ended up giving him like a child abuse, and then they put Jason back in the same house when he was still a child with his abuser, and obviously he got abused again. Angelina, you there?
Okay, I think I'm back now.
You there, Angelina? You just freeze up. I can just have you calling on phone too. How's it working, Jamie? Should I have her calling on studio line? Hey, Jane, what should I do, Jane?
I usually don't jump in here with you, Donnie, but before the show, I remember Mike sending you a second set of passcodes for Richard. If he's using the original ones that Angelina is also using, they're going to be cutting each other out as they try and log in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, I never got any.
Can you hear me now?
Angelina, you're on.
Angelina's back. So, Richard, if you're listening, just hang tight. We'll get you some new information so we can get you back on.
Okay, great.
Angelina, you back? Angelina.
I'm here, but the router's being rebooted.
All right. Well, this happens. We're all good. Let me just let. Yeah, you left and then Richard popped up. I was so confused. You like morphed out. I was like.
Well, it was so, I don't know. It just all of a sudden kept freezing every time I would talk. I don't know, but I had full bars.
It happened right around when Jason, when Richard came on. So I think it had something to do with that. We had to get rid of him, but. You there, Angelina? Oh, this again. We're going to figure it out. I'm just going to keep on telling this story because this is a story that must be told. It's not working. Just you guys can both call in on the studio line. We can have your voice and we'll put a picture up. This story, I won't let anything stop me from telling this story. I won't let audio. I won't let prison lockdowns. Angelina, you're back. You're playing games with me again.
Listen, I switched networks. I got on my own hotspot, so hopefully that will solve the problem.
Hopefully. But like I said, it doesn't matter because I will continue to tell this story as long as I'm here. I think you're good. So, let's just get back up to date. I was telling the viewers where we're at. I just think that's the biggest part. Like when people look at the story, I think sometimes the vigilante part kind of hurts it sometimes because they don't realize my eyes. It was a story of a victim who did it. Now, it would be different if Jason wasn't a victim and didn't, like if it was me and I just woke up one day and I went and attacked sexual predators and I was never a victim. I think it's different, but he was found by the system. This is somebody who tried to do it.
These guys weren't even just sexual predators. Yeah, these were actual like pedophiles and child pornography type of stuff. And
the ones who later on were
everybody knows
the people you're talking about are the three scumbags or whatever you want to call them who were sexual predators who Jason was charged with attacking. They preyed on children.
Yes, specifically preyed on children, not just and it doesn't make it any better or worse, but he specifically picked these people because they preyed on children. And also, I will tell you one thing. What they're going to tell you in the media and in the case and everything like that is that, he went on the sex offender register and looked for pedophiles. That's not the case. If you know about the gangster, underground community, they don't snitch on each other. Even if it comes to, they know something creepy is going on. You know what they do is they tell somebody that they know is going to handle the business. They don't call the police. They don't do that on each other. So Jason, at this point in his life, when he starts to commit his crimes, had nothing to lose. His wife had, divorced him. She wouldn't let him talk to the kids. He none of the family was there. So he didn't have anything to lose at this point, and so he started hearing these rumors about these people actively committing crimes against children, sexual crimes against children. So he starts writing down these names. And when he goes to look them up, they just so happened, majority of them were already on the sex offender registry list for previous convictions. It wasn't, he just went and randomly picked people who preyed on children out on the sex offender registry list. It was people were like, hey, this is what's going on over here. The third guy that he went to where he got caught, Wesley Demarest, or maybe, okay, I can't remember which one it was, but at some point, one of them, when he was going up to the house, he said it looked like a 10-year-old girl hopped on a bike and rode off. And he was a part of, like something youth band, youth ministry.
They seem to all be, all these people, they all seem like they're like in the church. So many of these predators, they hide behind churches and coaching and little leagues and stuff. So I'm not surprised so far. Just two of the people.
And I'm like, how are we allowing somebody who's convicted of sexually abusing his 10-month-old granddaughter to have children in his house and he be a youth leader? Like, I don't understand that. So anyways, so this was that, the people get that part confused. Also, Jason's not going to go in front of the, judge and like say, yeah, I was given these names.
So they weren't random. They weren't random. Basically, so Jason was convicted of attacking these three predators or charged with it or whatever, but they weren't random. They made it sound like he just went on the sex offenders list and found it. It'd be like me having somebody in my life who suffered an overdose from drugs, and then me finding out somebody was in my neighborhood selling drugs, and they were a convicted drug dealer. Nobody was basically, that's what it sounds like. He knew, word was out that these guys were doing something that they were already charged with, and nobody was doing anything. Just like nobody did anything for Jason when he was a little kid.
Yes.
Just I'm trying to get the picture, that.
So let me tell you something. Yes. So can you guys hear me? There's not a lag or a glitch or anything, right?
We're perfect.
Okay, good. So, the one guy who he assaulted, who had the child pornography charges, at this particular house or place, he actually had two girls with him, who, he was hanging out with them prior that night, and they knew what he was about to go do. And these women had been abused themselves, and they wanted to join him. So he allowed them to come along. And I've actually interviewed one of these girls, and she said, in like her own words, she said, Angelina, it was like a movie. She goes, while Jason was, and there's video footage as well. She took some video footage from her cell phone, which I've seen, of Jason, slapping this guy around and talking to him. And, you can hear him talking about, why don't you donate that to the kids? Like, why do you have this? Why wasn't that donated to the... And so the guy sits there and he says, no, I'm not that kind of person anymore. That was 10 years ago or whatever he says. I don't do that anymore, right? Well, she turns, you can hear her say, she turns, I can't watch this anymore. So she turns the video off, and she said, we started going through his stuff to kind of like steal some shit from him. And she said, I walked up to his closet, and she said there was like a bunch of like flannel shirts in the closet. And she said, I reached and I slid the shirts back to try to look in the closet for whatever I could take. And she said there was a wall full of child porn. She said it was horrific, and it was like she was in the movies. So these, regardless of what they were charged for, they had charged the years that they served or whatever, they were still actively committing these, crimes.
I'm sure it didn't surprise Jason,
that's just
though.
like one.
I'm sure it didn't surprise him because people.
No.
Jason had this happen to him, so it's not a stretch. Like his abuser was put in the same home as him after being found.
Yes. Yes. And that is what blows my mind. And then, so, going back to the Jason story a little bit. So he's, 13 there. He's being out of the house as much as possible. He turns 16 at some point and gets a girlfriend. And girlfriend finds out the history and everything that has happened. And girlfriend's like, hell no, we need to get you out of here. So she goes and picks him up at in the middle of the night. He sneaks out of his window one night and he goes to come back the next day. And they have all of his stuff in bags on the front porch. All of the locks are changed. The windows are locked, everything. And they were like, no, you're not allowed to come back. They wouldn't give him his ID, social security card, birth certificate, none of that. And their exact words were, we don't want to aid him into his life of crime, was what their exact words were. So he takes what belongings he has at 16. Girlfriend and him sell off her vehicle, which was some sort of truck, get however much money they could, grab some flights to Seattle, and they started. Joel was there. That's what was. Joel was there. He helped them get a little apartment. They bought a little motorcycle for them to get around, and that's where they, I asked Jason. I said, "Do you remember committing your very first crime?" He said, "Yeah, I do. I absolutely do." And he said, we were sitting in this empty apartment that Joel had gotten for us. And we're sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, eating food bank food. And I realized that we didn't even have any toilet paper to wipe our asses with. So I hopped on my motorcycle, drove down to the corner store, went into the bathroom, unraveled a roll of toilet paper, stuck it in my helmet, and I'm on my way home. And I'm just racking my brain. How am I going to make money? Oh, I forgot a portion of this story. When they first got there, he actually got a job as a telemarketer for a couple weeks. And he went to pick up his first check.
Was he 16 at the time?
He was 16. Yeah.
But he dealt with stuff that no 6-year-old should ever have to be. Because I could just imagine what kind of state of mind he was in.
Yes.
That's the one reason we're having Richard Jensen on. He's actually on Richard's national speaker. His story. They did a documentary on ESPN on his story. Won an Emmy. He has a book called "To Be a Champion in Life." He deals with a lot of these survivors and people who struggle with PTSD from being victims of sexual abuse, and he sees what the addiction ends up happening and all that stuff. Richard deals with it firsthand.
Yeah.
Richard,
I just want to encourage you to continue your mission. This movement, bringing light to the failure of the system, bringing light to the the after effects, the struggle that abused deal with the rest of their life. The mother failed in this scenario. The parents, they failed, and unfortunately Jason has a long uphill battle, and it's just a heart-wrenching story. I wanted to call in. I don't have a lot of insight necessarily on I wasn't abused as a child. That's a misinformed, but I've done a lot of time in prison. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've dealt with a lot of different issues in the world, and too bad Jason, sounds like there was quite a few little interventions along the way, and he was failed as a child. And then he was failed in the system, and it just puts him in a situation to be kind of doomed in a way. He doesn't know who to trust, who to look to, And,
yes, I agree.
A lot of issues to deal with too,
Yeah,
well, thank you for the encouragement, and thank you for coming on. Nice to meet you, Richard.
Yeah, Richard's not a survivor of sexual abuse. That just so many of these things, a lot of stuff like PTSD and addiction follows people who were survivors of other thing, and Richard just had a crazy life too. It wasn't that, but he's dealt with a lot of these people, and he sees firsthand. I think people forget what stuff can happen after Jason went through all that. Like being that young and being abused and let down by the system, that leads to mental health problems, addiction, PTSD. Like I can only imagine, like all that stuff. You
build this armor around you too, and you're afraid to let anybody in, and you're afraid to ask for help, and you're just it just calluses you, you know. It calluses you, and now you've got more work to do to dig into that inner person, you know. I always call it armor, you know, that armor that I built over the years from the system, and everybody fucked me and failed me, and you know, and so there's a lot of work to thin that armor out and find out there is people out there that can help. There's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of help, you know.
Yes.
But he was failed, but there's a lot of support out there and love, you know, and it sounds like you're trying to bring more exposure to the crumbled system, and it is messed up in a lot of ways.
Richard, so you got a lot, you know, a lot of this stuff. You know what it's like for these people who are suffering through this. So Jason was charged with 3 counts of you know, beating up these scumbag child predators or whatever. I don't know the proper term, but he assaulted 3 of them. Hit one with a hammer. He broke into their houses, took some things, and, you know, basically said he was there because he was like the demon for these victims who nobody was standing up for. That was his whole thing. You know, he was there because nobody else was there. He specifically hunted these people down. And they gave him 23 years. The same people who didn't put his abuser in the court. It was the same court system, wasn't it? I think he told me. Same court system that put his abuser back home now gave him 23 years. The only time they ever did anything. The only time they ever did anything was when Jason did something. You know, hitting somebody with a hammer is nothing compared to touching a kid. You know, they're not even in the same ballpark. What do you? I'm gonna
tread really, really lightly here. Okay, I'm gonna tread really lightly. All right. It doesn't. You know, it doesn't justify it, obviously. You know, but the problem is that he wasn't able to access the help he needed at the right time in his life to help him process the problems that he had in his life, you know. And so the system, we're back to the system, guys. It's a big part of the problem.
So they found him again because that was a
These
cry
are
for
innocent
help.
Kids.
That was a cry for help. Jason never, you know, he doesn't try to, he knows he did wrong. But when he did that, that's when they should have got him help. He could have went in, you know, there's programs. Instead, they just threw the book at him, 23 years, instead of saying, hey, we found this guy, you know, he messed up. Jason knows right away, man. He doesn't wish he was in that. He was put in that situation, man. The only thing I find remarkable was I don't know how he didn't kill the people. I could have never done what he did and not killed the people. I think he should, you know,
not killed him.
Yeah, I think he should be commended for not doing that.
He needed their help, honestly.
Yeah. It was a cry for help, I think, man.
That's my biggest
He was
issue.
crying for help. Like, what do I got to do?
For help.
You know, and he had to hit some scumbags with a hammer, and instead of getting him help, they sent him away for 23 years. They brought the victims. They called them victims. They brought them to court, and they let them testify that their lives were ruined because of Jason. That's what they let them come in and say Jason ruined their lives. How about the people they victimized?
What about all their people the lives that they ruined? What about Jason's life? Like, are you kidding me? Anyways, it frustrates me because my biggest issue is people are like, stop trying to hail your brother a hero. You know, what he did was wrong. He broke the law. I get all of that. And honestly, you've never heard me call my brother a hero. I'm the last person who will say Jason is a hero. What my issue is the sentence. I understand, and he will be the first to admit he deserves time for his crimes. What he did was not right. But 23 years after what happened to him as a 13-year-old child, and they failed him, like, this is your chance to redeem yourself. Like, help this man, please.
Yeah,
that's my biggest thing is I want him to have a second chance at life. I want him to get the help he deserves and so badly needs. And we're getting him PTSD therapy. We're getting him drug treatment. He's got people. He knows that there's people out here that love him now. You know, he's actually got actual family and people who go visit him and write him and call him. And before, you know, he had none of that. So that is my biggest thing is I just want to help rehabilitate him and give him a second chance at life and let him know that there's people out here that love him. And, you know, he's starting to realize that now. And, you know, he and I both want to, you know, get him out of prison and get into this type of, you know, like help kids, help people of sexual abuse. You know, that's the kind of field that we want to get into, and do it legally, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. So that's the goal, and that's what we're working towards. So
Yeah, we're hopefully gonna have.
Your
We're gonna. Jason was supposed to come on today, but he's not on. Just for anybody, you know, he's incarcerated. You know how that goes. Prisons get locked down and everything, so that's why he's not here. But hopefully we have him on, and you know, sometime soon, so he can tell the story too. But Richard, what were you saying, bud?
Yeah, I'm just saying you're advocating for your brother, but what you're doing is you're exposing a much bigger problem, you know, and it's much bigger than this story. And you're resonating, and this one platform of the hundreds out there along your journey, you're exposing a lot of healthy things. You know, it's like the system's broken, and you know these kids need help. They need guidance. They need mentors. They need somebody that they can look to, you know, and our parents are supposed to be the number one person, you know, that cares about us the most in the whole entire world. And when that fails, kids are going to struggle, you know. A lot of, I spent 7 years locked up and almost 20 years deep in addiction and homeless. So I understand the struggle in that aspect, you know, but a lot of us that have struggled, it's because of the system. It's because of breakdown as a child, you know, abuse, addiction, things like that, you know. And it's like we need more resources. And what I found is resources are limited in a lot of demographics, and we need more of it, you know, available to the people, you know.
The one thing I just want to, Angelina, you were bringing up, it was something that actually, you know, caught me by surprise, because the story, you know, people hear the story, just somebody who, just from like the little bit of the story, they call him the Alaskan Avenger. He went out there and he did what everybody always dreamt of doing. He hunted down these scumbags, these predators. How many times I thought about doing that? But you know, and he did it. He did it. He went down and he attacked these. So they put the name in the media, you know, Alaskan Avenger. I think a lot of people just feel like he looks at himself as a hero. But when I talked to him, man, I was so surprised. First off, he's intelligent, man. He's so smart for going through what he went through, man. I couldn't believe how smart he was. But he was the farthest thing from somebody who's glorifying this. You could tell he didn't want to be in this situation. He didn't want to have to go through that. But he had no choice, man. He wasn't proud of it at all. That's the one thing I noticed, man. Not once was he like, hey, I'm the guy, I'm the last. No, he was like almost like, man, this sucks. Like, why did I have to go through this? Another thing, not once did he like really talk. I was like, how are you doing 23 years for being screwed by the system? And he seemed so like positive. He wanted to help people. He basically said, Jason was telling me like, hey, I look at it this way. I had to do 23 years. Them 3 people I attacked will probably never, ever victimize another person because I did that to them. So, in my eyes, I just saved countless kids from ever going through this. He's like, 23 years is nothing. And you could tell, he was like, he didn't want to be in jail. He shouldn't be in jail. But you could tell, you know, he wasn't looking for somebody to rescue him. You know, it's awesome everybody's doing it, but it's not like Jason's like, hey, I'm a hero. You know, he's not like that at all. That's what I was shocked by, man. He's just, Jason the person, I think, people need to see him. And he wasn't he didn't want to do this. They forced him. The people who were supposed to protect him forced him.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing is not only am I trying to obviously help my brother get out of prison, but just bringing awareness to this huge problem that we have that I had literally no idea was that this big of a problem. So I'm not a victim. I'm not a survivor. But when my brother's story started, you know, kind of going viral, the amount of messages, thousands of messages from men, women, kids, detailed, horrific stories they were telling me in my, you know, private messages was just overwhelming. And I was like, I had no idea how bad of an issue this really is. And it's everywhere, all over the entire world. Like, I have messages from people in every freaking country. It's insane. And just bringing awareness to the situation. And if everybody's talking about this problem, I feel like it'll do a couple of things. One, I think that if everybody's aware and very passionate about this, that I think pedophiles and sexual predators will be less, they'll be a little bit scared to be committing their crimes, because everybody on every street corner that they see is going to be looking for things, looking for, all of that. And then another thing is that it's going to give these, victims or survivors the courage to speak up about what's going on, or what somebody's trying to do to them or has done to them or currently doing to them, because that's a big part of it, is that they don't bring it up because they're shamed. Like, it's very taboo to talk about this, and they just keep it bottled up. And that's not fair. If everybody's talking about it and they know it's not a taboo subject, that it'll give them a platform, like this is where you can tell your story. It's, tell us what's going on, ask for help, that kind of thing. So those two things I think are really, really huge if we just continue to talk about it and continue to spread the word. So yeah, those are my goals. Get my brother out and, raise awareness. So
yeah, Jason's still locked up right now. But it took. It might take somebody like him who had to do what he had to do after being fouled by the system for people to actually start noticing we got a huge problem. Maybe his story is what will change it. That's what I get out of it, and that's what I was talking to him about. Like, I know it sucks right now. He's going through it, but I think there's a bigger purpose, and the only way they could bring awareness to this is by taking somebody as strong as Jason and making him their biggest soldier, making him go through it because they knew he could survive it, and then
yes,
people would finally notice. So, that's what I get out of it. And Jason, he got 23 years, but you said recently, what's he got in right now? He got like 5 years in, but
yeah, so he's been in since July of 2016. So that puts him at 5.5 or so years, right? Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. He has parole, a discretionary parole hearing in July of 2023. So we're doing everything that we possibly can to prepare for that. Now, obviously, the prison system definitely does not make it easy to get these inmates the things that they need to heal, such as PTSD therapy, drug treatment. There's so many different things that they could benefit from, and they don't make it easy. So we're kind of thinking outside the box right now. The biggest thing right now, so he's actually been accepted into a program, which is super awesome. It's an 18-month program, and it's basically about, I want to say like 80% is what I heard, and don't quote me on this, but just they have a high percentage of inmates who get paroled after completing this course. And I have no doubts that he can complete this course because he's super intelligent. So he just got accepted into that, which is awesome. We do have to pass a series of approvals up the line. So we're hoping he's gonna, after the beginning of the year, and it'll be right when he's going up for discretionary parole. He's getting a drug assessment test because he does have some drug charges on his record, which they will hold against him. If you go up to parole board and you've done anything, they'll be like, well, you did this and you didn't get treated for it. So nope, you're not good. You're not well to be out into the real world. So we're getting that done.
I find that funny because, like Richard said, them problems he had probably came from the court system. Now, it's so common to see people went through that abuse, suffer from addiction and stuff like that, right, Richard?
Guys.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't like they made him, it's what happens. You see so many times people suffering from trauma like that, myself included. They go to drugs and alcohol as their escape.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing. And then PTSD therapy, which is huge, which thank goodness, like shout out to Jack Luna at, I think it's Dark Topics podcast, for helping to pay for, actually they paid for all of it, the PTSD therapy that he's gotten for the last few months. And they're going to be able to pay through the end of January for his PTSD therapy, but they have to end it there. And we really need him to get PTSD therapy all the way up until his discretionary parole in July of 2023. So that's like a huge thing that we're trying to find, some sort of funding for, because it's not cheap, help with, but he has it at least until the end of January. So So we're getting him the PTSD therapy, and we have some, we have a change.org petition too that people can sign. Like, we have a lot of other things.
Yeah, tell us what we got you. Anything people can do to help. So many people want to help. I'll share the stuff later, but anybody listening right now, what's the best way they can go on change.org?
Yeah, so if they're in, on any of our profiles, there's a link tree right there. Yes. And so there's change.org petition that you can go and sign. There's even some like letter templates that you can go, that's to the governor and to the, I think it's to the parole board. You can go in, you can download the template, you can edit it, put in your own name, add anything, change anything you want, and then submit it. And we'll submit it, to the parole board, or you'll send it directly to the governor. All of these things will hopefully help when he goes up to parole, in 2023. There's lots of how-to videos on there. You can add money to his music if you want to like give him a little gift. There's merchandise that will go to the cause, all of that.
Can I send him a hammer? Can I send him a hammer and tell him to get back to work?
No, you can't do that.
I'm just kidding. I know. After talking, he would never.
Send him a hammer and have him sign it. That would be great. Send it back to me. I'm like, no.
Yeah, he didn't glorify it at all. That's what stood out. Like me, I would have been like, yeah, I probably would have had a hammer tattooed on my head. I'm like, yeah, that was me. Like, anytime I brought it up, I realized right away, like, all right, because at the end of the day, he's a victim.
I mean, and that's the thing is he admits.
Give me the hammer.
He did it. He admits that, what he did wasn't probably the smartest or the right thing to do, but
he took responsibility.
We're doing the best. I know. But I'm hoping that we're going to get him out and we're going to be able to change the world in a legal way. He's writing books now. He could probably be some sort of counselor for people with PTSD or sexual trauma, children who've been abused, all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're going for. Yeah, there's lots of ways to help if you click the link tree. And honestly, the biggest thing is if you can't help, financially, or you don't have money to buy a shirt or whatever, the bigger than any of that is honestly sharing his story. The more people that share, that's exponential. You know what I'm saying? Like just getting his story out there is huge. So that's like my number one advice to people who want to help is share his story everywhere that you can.
Yeah, the more you look into his story, the more you realize. Like, I loved the story before I knew like half the shit. I heard Hammer and Predators, and he attacked them, and I was ready to vote for president for him. And then I was like, oh shit, this guy. I was like, this guy isn't just some maniac who he's a victim. He's like one of the worst victims I've ever seen. I've been through all the legal system. I've seen people. I never seen anybody screwed so. Every step of the way, he was the victim. Every step of the way. The only time they ever did anything was to charge him. Like, people look into his story. It's all there. It's not making up stuff. All you got to do is look at it. It's all there. All these people found him. It's all documented. Yeah. And now he's doing 23 years, just 23 years for, beating up a couple scumbags, Like, it's crazy. People got to look into the story. The story's all over. Just Google it. I'll post everything about it. Share the story. People need to read the whole story, not just the headline.
Yes. And not everything you read in the news is accurate, just so you know. Like, and not everything you read in the news is accurate. So, yeah.
Somebody just said this story is so unbelievable. The fact that these scumbags are running free and only man that stepped in to deliver justice is guilty. It's in jail now, found guilty. The same people who were supposed to protect him now, victimize him again. That's what... He was fouled so much.
And that's my biggest thing.
He didn't act like a victim when I talked to him. He should be screaming. He got fucked so bad, and he's like, hey.
Well, that's what I want. That's what I want. Like, give him some time, but also please help him. Give him some therapy, some PTSD therapy. Like, do things to help him while he's serving his time for his crimes. Like, I'm not saying that he didn't do anything wrong. That he didn't commit a crime. I'm not saying that he didn't break the law, because he did. But my biggest issue is that he most likely wouldn't even be in this position had he not been sent back into that home at the age of 13. So, you know, his first crime was committed, you know, because they couldn't eat. He literally, you know, I didn't finish that story, but he was on his way home with his toilet paper and his helmet, and he saw this, you know, gym, you know, place, and was like, you know what? I bet they, you know, put money in their wallets in the lockers in there. And he went back the next day, and sure enough, there was money. And he and the girlfriend were like, oh my God, we can buy food, you know, and that's how. And he wasn't just a little asshole kid who just wanted to commit crimes and be a dick. He did it because they didn't have any food. So anyways, it's just, you know, he needs help. He needed their help. They didn't help him, and I want to help him.
Yeah, there's so much to this story. There's so much more people need to hear. I feel like we're just gonna have to run this back and talk more about this because we had all the difficulties with that. We ran out of time, and I feel like we still have so much more to talk about. I know Jason was supposed to come on. I would like to figure that out. You know, it's hard with him being in jail. And guys like Richard can come on, and I think we should talk about this again any week we can. If you want to come back on, I'm sure everybody would like to hear more about this because we got to get out of here. We could go for like 2 more hours. Like, there's so much more to this story people need to hear. But until
I told you I could talk for hours about this subject.
Until then, like, people hear the story. There's even more. And, you know, look into it, share it. And if it's good with all of them, I would like to just continue where we leave off today, you know, sometime in a week or two. Is that good, Angelina? Richard, you're always more than welcome. I feel like good. Guys like you and Michael Bell and other guys we had on the show, man, they really, you know, they bring a lot of good stuff to this, man, because you've been around all this stuff. You've seen people suffer from the PTSD and the addiction, and you've seen victims.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage her on her movement, you know, and I've also seen change, you know, and he sounds like a perfect candidate that can change his life. You know, it's like I've dealt with a lot of convicts. Doesn't sound like my
Jason was the most opportunities. He was fucked every time, and I couldn't believe how smart he was. The stuff he was saying, he's unbelievable. And we're going to talk more about him. Anthony, before we get out of here, unfortunately, we got to leave. Anything you want to leave, we're going to bring you back on. Well, anything you want to leave with for the first half?
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you to Donnie, Richard. Thank you, guys. This is huge. Ronnie, thank you so much. Like, whoever donated that $1,000, like, thank you so much. That is huge. You have no idea. That's going straight to his PTSD therapy. Yes, and so that's super helpful. Thank you to whoever's listening and whoever shares this. I appreciate everything. Jason and I could not be where we are without all of you guys, all of the listeners and all of the supporters and the people who share the story and talk about it. So thank you all so much.
Angelina, letting people hear the story. Without you, so many people, even like me, I wouldn't have heard the story. Once you hear the story, you're furious. You want to help them. So anybody just reading the story, Angelina, thank you so much for helping Jason, for bringing the spotlight on something that has to be. And Richard, thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure. We're going to have Jason on. He couldn't come on. So who's the next best person? Richard. Thank you. You want to leave with anything, Richard, before we get out of here, buddy?
Richard.
Thanks, guys. No, I'm good. Just know, guys, you know, to all the listeners out there that are struggling out there in the world for whatever you're struggling with, whatever that might be, because there's a lot of them. The world's a tough place to navigate sometimes. There's help out there, there's support groups, and there's others that can relate to you and understand.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Angelina, thank you. Hungry for Hope Nation, please check out all the links we're going to put up there. There's so much more to this story we need to share. Just share the story. Tell somebody about it. Tell your neighbor, your friend. You know, this isn't just some crazy vigilante guy. This is a guy who was wrong, man. He's not playing victim. He just wants to help people. That's all he wants to do. Let's help him. Thank you, Hungry for Hope Nation. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.